some of the resistance that you're met with when you're doing contract negotiations, it may not be a nasty thing. The builder's staff are overwhelmed, they're overworked, they've got too much on their plate to have to deal with it. It's just path of least resistance. It's human nature to take the path of least resistance. So in today's live, I just want to talk you through 3 little tips that I use all the time to grease the wheels and make your departure schedule shorter. So subcontractors watching this is all for you. Bear in mind, I am mindful that there are probably some builders and staff of builders watching as well. I think that's a great thing because I know when I was a builder CA how frustrating it was having to go through departure schedules, and it's something that a lot of builders CAs aren't really skilled to do. And they don't really have the time in their trade letting schedule to be heavily negotiating terms all the time. Because I do think it makes a huge difference what you open when you open a departure schedule. If you receive something in your inbox and you open it up and you're like, oh, how long this is, like this is going to take hours. And then the subcontractor also will be overwhelmed having already put it together. So you've already gone to so much time and effort to put this very long departure schedule forward. And then you give it to the builder and the builder just goes, I don't want to have to look at that. So the first way that I like to get departure schedules shorter is by getting a better starting point to begin with. You might be surprised. About 50% of the time when we ask builders for a better starting point or a better contract starting point, it doesn't necessarily have to be a minor works. It could be the Australian standard version of the contract they've already got. So they may have a 4901 or a 4903 or something really overcooked that lawyers have put lots and lots of extra clauses into. And you might be thinking, well, this is going to be like 100 departures. I have to give this to the builder and the builder's got to flip tables. So you can then go back to them and say, hey, listen, that's a massive contract. Have you got something a bit shorter? Could we have a better starting point? I actually had a client last week who did this with a builder. He went back and he was like, whoa, that's massive. What? Are you really going to make me read this whole big contract? And the builder was like, all right, and gave him the smaller, nicer version. The other thing is most law firms who are providing big contract documents to builders have got a fair version. They've got a undercooked or a fairer version that they could probably give to the builder. And if you don't ask for it, you won't get a better starting point. So that's the very first thing. And the reason you should always ask this question is because if you don't ask it, sometimes you will give the builder a 100-line departure schedule and they'll go, we're not looking at that. Here, look at this contract instead. They'll go, here's a minor works. And that's their solution. They would have given it to you in the first place if you'd said to them, look, this is going to be 100 departures or more. It's going to take forever. You need us on site on Monday. Have you got a better starting point? And they would have given it to you at that point. But now you've done all the work of reviewing the big nasty contract when you could have just looked at the smaller, shorter one. So we actually had that situation with a client last week. Client came to me and said, hey, can you review this contract? And I just said, look, this is a completely different contract than what you need. You're a hire company, you need something totally different. Went back and explained to the builder, and the builder straight away came back with the minor works. Now that client has effectively halved his bill with me to have a contract review because we don't have to read 400 pages of legal jargon. So number one, ask for a better starting point. You can do everything right in the construction industry and things will still go bad. So what I wanted to do with this checklist is reverse engineer the things that go bad that result in you not being paid. What it is an admin solution with a systematic approach that avoids legal drama. And if you do end up in hot water legally, that is the type of A-grade evidence that will help you win your case. Download the business risk checklist to be able to reduce the likelihood that you end up in strife. Number 2, and 50% of the time, you will get a better starting point. So trust me, I do hundreds of contract reviews. I've done 450 plus contract reviews in the last 5 years alone. 50% of the time, if we ask for a better starting point, we will get a better starting point. And if you don't get a better starting point, you actually position the dialogue between the parties and you manage the expectations of the builder, you're giving them the heads up. This is going to be a long departure schedule if you won't give me a better starting point. So then you can always fall back on that and be like, well, hey, hang on a second, I did warn you of this. Now, the second thing that you need to do to have a shorter departure schedule is properly do the departure schedule from the outset. Don't do the lazy thing where you just copy and paste everything because you're like, I'll throw in everything in, plus the kitchen sink, and then that way I've got things to give up on. What you need to do is properly triage those clauses at this point and don't nitpick. So if you're just changing one word in a paragraph to add the word reasonably or something like that, and it's a grey area and you can't for certain envision how that would benefit you, even though it makes you feel a bit better that that word's in there, don't put it in there. Don't have a whole extra departure just to add one word here and there, unless, of course, your insurer requires it. So when I say don't nitpick the departure schedule, you're going to be going, well, how do I know? How do I know which departures not to have in there and which ones to have in there? So the way that I like to do it is it's a garden variety risk assessment, something that we do with our Take Fives all the time. You've got your hierarchy of contract risk controls. So go through that with your team now and identify what you can cull before you give it to the builder. So you're managing the number and complexity of clauses that you've got on the departure schedule. You actually also look much more professional because if you've got things on your departure schedule that you didn't really think through and the builder says, you don't need, why would you need that? That's not even relevant. And it is entirely irrelevant and you could have just left it off. It will actually undermine your credibility with the builder because they'll go, oh, this guy's just crossing stuff out for fun. They're just trying to do it to make a point. So make sure you do this with your team. Go through and cull what you can cull before you actually give it to the builder. Make sure you properly review the contract. Now, the last thing, and this is where this is a technical strategy on how to get your departures much, much shorter, so you have fewer of them. And that is to group your departures by issues. Now, what I'm talking about here is if you're wanting to pick on qualifying causes of delay and liquidated damages, delay costs, all of those things, and dates for practical completion, then if you look at time under a contract, there's at least half a dozen places where you would need to make changes to properly protect yourself under the contract. So rather than have 6 different rows in different places in the departure schedule that forces everyone to keep regurgitating the same stuff, what I like to do is to have one row that says, we would normally ask for these things in terms of extensions of time. Here's our list of things that have a bearing on our work. We also always ask for 5% cap on liquidated damages or whatever it is that your business policy is. So you're actually reducing the number of rows that are in the schedule. And then what you do is in the column that says, what clause numbers does this relate to? You list out all the clause numbers that that particular issue relates to. So that's actually, when you strip it all away and you actually look at negotiation theory and the way that value negotiation is supposed to be undertaken, the whole point and all the value you're getting out of a contract negotiation is by picking the scab on all of the prickly issues before you actually get to sign. So by grouping the issues together, you should be thinking about, what do I need to worry about with this job? What's important to me under this contract? What am I worried about with the builder at the moment? What am I worried about with this site? So making sure that you group the issues together, it actually forces you to think logically about the job and pick a scab on all of the really nasty things that you think might go wrong. So those are my 3 tips on how to get your departure schedule much shorter. There are many, 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 many more tips just like these in our negotiation school course. And have a look at the course, because in terms of negotiating contracts with your builders, this is something that is sort of a 2-speed approach that subcontractors take, where they might do the good bloke builders markup and just cross things out, but there's not really any rhyme or reason, and they're not really sure that what they're crossing out is getting them the actual outcome they need. In fact, a lot of times when you just go broad brush crossing things out in contracts, you can actually break the way that the contract works from a legal perspective. So it's not always a good thing to go removing clauses that you might need back in there one day for your own benefit. So it gives you a false sense of security. What you really need is a strategic approach to contract negotiation. And it's not just the technical know-how, it's not knowing what clauses to pick on. A lot of it is about negotiation theory and understanding the human being that you are negotiating with and how you can grease the wheels to get what you need under contract without taking the deal and without giving up on what you actually need to get out of the transaction as well.
Thanks for sticking with me to the end of my podcast today. If you could benefit from a community of values-aligned subcontractors to manage your builder's contract and get paid on time, head on over to www.subbies-toolbox.com.au and check out our Subbies Toolbox membership. The Subbies Toolbox is not just a library of templates and resources. The real magic happens amongst our community of members, where we provide a safe and moderated space to share commercial street smarts and lessons learned from everyday struggles that are unique to commercial subcontracting businesses. So until next week, stay safe and get paid.